Julie Pasqual for YogaRenew, and today our subject is going to be the Dharma Talk, that first 5 to 7 minutes at the beginning of class. What I'd like to do in today's little clip is to demonstrate a Dharma Talk, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to deliver a Dharma Talk, what is a Dharma Talk, what does the word Dharma mean, and some best practices. So I'm going to take this Dharma Talk now as if I'm just sitting down in front of a class in person or in Zoom. All right, so I begin like this. Hi, my name is Julie. Have you ever had that experience when, and the expression is very, very telling, when someone walks into a room and sucks the air out of it? You know, that person, it's almost as if they had a dark cloud over their head. And even if the room had been perfectly peppy and happy up until that moment, it is literally as if the air got sucked out of it. Hopefully you've also had the opposite experience. When someone just walks into a room and it's as if they brought the entire party with them. It's like they turned on the lights. It's as if they were sunshine. Those two examples really show us the power of one single person's mood to influence an entire room. And I always think of those two different things when I think of this one particular sutra from the Yoga Sutras, which, if you don't know, is sort of like the technical manual for yoga philosophy. It says, one around one that is fully steeped in peacefulness, all enmity ceases. Meaning, when someone walks into the room that is completely peaceful, they can change the energy of the room. And I think this is really applicable because sometimes when you watch the news or read things on your phone and you see all the horrors of the world, you think, what can I do? One single person, what can I do? This sutra from the Yoga Sutras tells us we can be that one person who brings peacefulness into the room. To quote that great soul Mahatma Gandhi, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. It reminds me very much of the prayer of St. Francis, which probably some of you have heard. Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace. We can be the pebble that starts the ripples. And so the prayer of St. Francis goes like this. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. We can be that change. Now that prayer, though I love it, is a lot of words. And so in the Vedic, and when I say Vedic, it's the ancient Indian conception of things, they can sum up all those words into this 3-word mantra. And it goes like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace. And so that's the Dharma Talk. And then I would then instruct the students to open up their eyes and we would begin the physical part of the class. So what is a Dharma Talk? I know when I first started teaching, they called the beginning of class centering. But what's interesting is the word Dharma has many, many different meanings. For some, it means duty. It means religiosity. There's also the meaning that it's the calling one has in one's life. But a really deep meaning means that is the essence of something. That about a thing that cannot change. Like the essence of sugar is sweetness. If it ain't sweet, it's not sugar. That which about a thing can never be taken away. And so the essence of yoga is ultimately that it's not a physical practice exclusively. If you read the Yoga Sutras and the other texts, we see that asana, though we love it and is a very big, important part of yoga, is not nearly the whole ball game, we would say. And so the Dharma Talk gives us this opportunity to deliver this message that, hey, asana is great, but it's not the whole thing. And that it's just one small part to open us up to the huge world, the beautiful world of yoga philosophy. And so I often say that for YogaRenew, I get a lot of great opportunities to actually be a yoga teacher. Right? Most of the time I'm an asana teacher and I get people to stand on their heads and do all sorts of interesting things. But in my yoga philosophy classes, I actually am teaching yoga, the philosophy behind it. So the Dharma Talks are our opportunity to do that. Now, there's a couple things that the reason I wanted to deliver that particular Dharma Talk is I wanted to speak to you about what it is I do. But first, I'd like to give you some just basic tips. Number one on a Dharma Talk, my personal rule number one, is that it's got to be about yoga. And that might seem limiting to some people, but this is a yoga class. So it's not that we can't bring in other things, but it's got to talk to yoga. And ultimately, the more you know about yoga philosophy, you understand that that is a broad concept. You can talk about the ancient texts, like I referenced the Yoga Sutras. I could also have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita here. There's so many ancient texts as well as modern texts. Yoga philosophy also includes the breath. It also includes the subtle body, the chakras, the koshas. It also includes Ayurveda. We can look to nature. Nature is so many teachers. You ever wonder why it is so many of the yoga poses are named after things of nature? Yoga is full of what's called itihastas or Puranas. These are the yogic stories. And who, quite frankly, does not like to learn through stories? There are beautiful what's called bhajans or mantras that can be explained. Yoga philosophy has so much. And so we don't need to think, oh, it's just one particular text. We take these ancient teachings, as one of my teachers says, we represent them. And when we look at the word represent, we see it's two words, re and present. We represent them for time, place, and circumstance, and with our own particular personalities. So rule number one, it's gotta be yoga. Rule number two is that it's got to be as structured as the rest of your class. You know that the expression, you only have one chance to make a first impression. Before you can show your students your wonderful sequencing and your great cueing, and if you're teaching in person, your wonderful hands-on, first you have this. It is literally their first impression of you. So a Dharma Talk should be as thought out and as structured as the rest of your class. And I'll talk about how to structure that in just a second. So it's gotta be yoga. It's gotta be structured. It can be personal, but not about you, right? You need to think again, you've just met these people 5 minutes ago. You're not going to overshare your personal life. People like to know a little something about you, but it's not your therapy session, yeah? So it can be personal, but not about you. Remembering you just met these people a few moments ago, right? So it's about yoga. It's being structured, personal about you. It should teach something. Just as we want a really good asana class, it's an experience, but also we would like our students to leave having learned something about the pose, about their body, about what needs to be stretched or contained in their bodies to do this pose. We also would like for them to leave having something in the back of their minds to remember about this beautiful thing that is yoga philosophy. And it should inspire and not deflate. Sometimes, quite frankly, and I'm a yoga philosophy geek, when you get into some yoga philosophy, it can be pretty heavy. And so you don't want to leave your students like, oh my God, right? You don't want to leave them deflated. So you should leave with an uplifting message to say that there are tons of things that are challenges in life. And here's why I love yoga philosophy, because yoga philosophy can help us. Even though it's so ancient, it really can be applied to the day-to-day life. And so there's many different ways of putting together a Dharma talk, but I have this sort of method that I'd like to quickly pass on to you. So if you think about the Dharma talk I just delivered, the first thing I said was, anybody have that experience or know that expression of someone who sucks the life out of the room? I began with something, an expression, an experience that people have every day. It's good to begin with something that everybody can relate to. In that way, you're not just coming, and in this ancient book, this. Picking something, starting with something that everyone can relate to. The second thing is, and this leads to my first point about what is a Dharma talk, I then related it to a Yoga Sutra. Again, you don't ever have to say, it's this Yoga Sutra number or this Bhagavad Gita number. But as long as your mind, you can track it back to it's this yogic concept. So I began with something that everyone could apply, appreciate or understand. And then I did mention it's yoga because. And then I referenced something that I won't say almost everybody, but a lot of people have heard, the prayer of St. Francis. You could also, and I actually would, have saved that whole reading to the end of class, when they're in Shavasana or something like that, because it's lovely to have your information and sprinkle your little philosophy all throughout the class. It's also good to have what I call a tagline, right? If you could sum up your yoga philosophy point, your Dharma talk point, in one line, what could it be? I think about the symbol of Nike. When you hear the words, and it is global, I know this now, just do it. You think Nike. Having a tagline like that is something you can say all throughout the class to remind your students of their original point. Like after I chanted, I said, Lord, let me be an instrument of your peace. That could be the tagline, because that tracks back to my original point in the yoga philosophy. And the other thing that you try to do is try to say how it could be applicable. I reference that when you look at the news, it's hard to think about what to do. This sutra can say, we can be that change. So having a yoga philosophy point that you have lived and you have some experience with is probably my number one takeaway. One of my teachers just used to say that as yoga teachers, we're supposed to test drive the philosophy for our students. You can speak with what's called Vigan, realized knowledge. If you have taken these texts and taken these yoga teachings and tried to live them in your life, and in that way, what comes out of your mouth isn't just a cold thing of you reading, isn't you trying to make yourself sound more knowledgeable and someone different from who you are. You're a person that lives in this time who's taken these ancient teachings and has embodied them, and now you are sharing what you know. You're sharing your yoga. And in that way, to get back to my little sample Dharma talk, you really can be the change you want to see in the world, to quote that great soul Mahatma Gandhi. You can take these ancient teachings that are so relevant and drop them like a pebble in your class. And so I hope this has been useful. I hope this has encouraged you to really bring these teachings of yoga into your class. It doesn't have to be long. If I say 5 minutes, it can be 3 minutes, it can be 2 minutes, it can be 1 minute. It could just be one line. But try to bring the Dharma of yoga into your class. Thank you so, so much for listening. The light in me bows down to the light in you. Namaste.